Welcome to the Rent to Rent Success podcast, the only podcast entirely dedicated to helping you achieve rent to rent success. We talk about the ethical way to get you started in property without buying it. This is our place to inspire each other to believe bigger, to be bolder, and to be game changers for good. Property investors and sisters Stephanie and Nicky Taylor are your guides on this exciting ride. Let's start up the engines and get ready to fly. Hello. It's Stephanie here. Welcome to episode 19 of Ask the Angels, where we answer your rent-to-rent questions. If you have a question you'd like me to answer, go to renttorentssuccess.com/ask, ASK, and record your question there for me to answer. Today, we've had a question from Sam about how rent-to-rent businesses can work with letting agents. This is a topic I know a lot of people are confused about. So let me play for you Sam's question.
Hi ladies, my name's Sam. I've set up a company called Deal Property Management in recent weeks, and I've begun my property venture, and I'm very excited to get into rent to rent. I have a question on the little story that you told going back to 2016 when you first walked into a letting agent and you explained what you did and whether or not they would put you onto the introduction only landlords. And when you say, my question is, when you say whether they would be prepared to work with you on a fully managed basis, what does that actually mean in terms of your relationship between yourself and the letting agency? I'm really enjoying listening to the pod, so keep it up.
Great question, wasn't it? And I know it's one that lots of people get confused about, whether it's lettings agents' fees or lettings agents, because on the face of it, we're both rent-to-rent businesses and letting agents manage properties. So aren't we really competitors? So I know that people do get confused. So today I'm going to break it down for you. I'm going to talk about how the arrangement works between you as a rent-to-rent business and a letting agent, and also how the fees work. So as Sam mentioned in his question, there are two main ways in which letting agents work. One is fully managed, it's called fully managed, and two is called introduction only, sometimes called tenant find only. So those are interchangeable. One is fully managed, two is tenant find only. So they kind of do what the name says on the tin, but let me actually go into how the relationships work between yourself and the letting agent. So I'm going to start off with fully managed. And as the name suggests, this is where the agent, in inverted commas, fully manages the property. The agent will collect the rent from the tenants and organize repairs. And for this, the agent receives a commission of the rent for this service. So for example, they might receive a recurring monthly fee of 10% plus VAT on each month's rent. So for example, if the rent was £900 a month, the agent would get £90 plus VAT each month. That's the 10%. That would be their commission if the commission was 10%. 10% is a pretty typical rate, but it could be higher, it could be lower. It would be whatever has been agreed between the landlord and the agent. So Sam wanted to know how this relationship works, what actually happens between us as the rent-to-rent business and the letting agent when the letting agent is managing the property on a fully managed basis. So here is a typical relationship if you work with a letting agent who is fully managing a property. So you, for this example, you're the tenant. So you pay the agent the rent as normal. So in our example, the rent's £900. You don't pay any extra. You just pay the rent of £900 to the agent. The agent's fees are taken from the rent. It's not an additional thing for you. Just imagine if you were a standard tenant using it for your residential property, you would just pay the rent. It's the landlord who pays the agent's fees. So you're the tenant and you pay the rent of £900. The next thing that happens is the agent then keeps the fee that they've agreed with the landlord. So that in our example is 10% plus VAT. So they keep 90% plus VAT, and the rest of the rent they pass on to the landlord. Usually in this type of fully managed arrangement, the agent will organize repairs and the landlord will pay for them. So you as the rent-to-renter would contact the agent about repairs. So let me stress, this is a typical arrangement. So you can arrange to do things differently, so long as everyone agrees to it. Now let's move on to the second way that letting agents work. This is tenant find only, also called, and I have referred to it before as introduction only. So tenant find only, in this instance, the letting agent finds the tenant only, as the name suggests. So the letting agent will introduce the tenant to the landlord and do the paperwork. And for this service, the letting agent receives a one-off fee. For example, a one-off payment, it could be 50% of the first month's rent plus VAT. So in our example, with a rental of £900 per month, the fee that the letting agent receives for that tenant find only will be £450 plus VAT. Now, the fee can be anything that's been agreed could be anything that's agreed between the landlord and the letting agent. It could be 1 month's rent. It could be, it's not usually a 2 months rent, but it could be whatever's agreed. It could be 1 month's rent. It could be less than half a month's rent. So I've just used an example there that's fairly typical. Let me go into the breakdown of how your rent-to-rent business would work with a letting agent on a tenant find only basis. So again, you're the tenant. The landlord pays the agent an agreed one-off fee for finding a tenant and doing the paperwork, as we said before. Could be 50% of the first month's rent. In our example, £450 plus VAT. The agent introduces you to the landlord and you deal with the landlord directly from then on. So you pay your rent to the landlord. As we said, the agent receives that one-off fee from the landlord and then doesn't receive anything ongoing. And you will organise repairs and pay for the minor ones, and the landlord will pay for more significant repairs. Again, these are the typical arrangements. And of course, you can arrange things differently if you want to with the landlord, as long as it's agreed by all parties. Now, letting agents much prefer to fully manage a property because it gives them monthly recurring revenue that could go on for years. The value of their business is tied to the number of fully managed properties that they have under contract. With a typical high street letting agent having staff costs, office overheads, their ability to generate cash flow for their business, sleep easily at night depends on the number of recurring revenue, fully managed properties that they have. And this need is even more acute with the introduction of the tenant fees ban. In 2019, the tenant fees ban came in and it banned most tenant fees. So you can see why a letting agent wouldn't want to lose any of their fully managed properties. You can make yourself much more tempting to letting agents by paying a fee to the letting agent for each tenant find only property you take on. So tenant find only work for letting agents is not as good for a letting agent because they only get paid once. But you could also pay them. If you'd like to know more about that, check out Ask the Angels #1. And that was all about how much commission should you pay to letting agents when taking on a rent-to-rent property. Now, that's an added extra that you can offer the letting agents, which might make them much more likely to give a property to you if it was a choice between you and another tenant. They may be much more likely to go with you, or they probably would be much more likely to go with you. So why would letting agents want to work with you? Well, imagine you can call someone and work with them where they do all the work and you get paid. That's what letting agents have with you. When they're fully managing a property, you do the property management, you pay the rent, and the letting agent gets paid their commission every single month without needing to manage a property. So you can see that it could easily relate to a great relationship where they trust you and you could have a steady stream of properties. The flip side is, though, that they don't want to lose any of their fully managed properties as well. So they don't want to work with you if they don't trust you, because they don't want you to go direct with the landlord and cut them out of the deal. But where both parties are winning, where both you and the letting agent are winning, they would bring you more deals. It's a win-win. So to summarize, fully managed, the typical arrangements are you are the tenant, you pay the agent the rent as normal, in our example, £900. The agent keeps the fee that they've agreed with the landlord, in our example, 10% plus VAT. So in our example, it's £90 plus VAT. And the agent pays the remaining rent to the landlord. And usually the agent will organise repairs, the landlord will pay for them, and usually the rent-to-renter would contact the agent for repairs. So that's the fully managed. And then the summary of tenant find only is the letting agent is just introducing the landlord to the tenant, that they get paid a one-off fee for that service. And it could be 50% of the rent. So in our example, £450 plus VAT. And again, you are the tenant. The landlord pays the agent an agreed one-off fee for finding the tenant. The agent introduces you to the landlord and you deal with the landlord directly from then on. You pay your rent to the landlord and the agent doesn't receive anything ongoing. They just get their one-off fee. What I mentioned at the end there is you can also choose to pay the agent a one-off fee, which might make them much more likely to give a property to you. And then ongoing, you will organise repairs and pay for the minor ones, and the landlord will pay for the more significant ones. So it's a win-win for both you and the letting agent, whichever way you go. And it's great to understand this relationships because it can really power up your business when you understand how to make something a win, not just for yourself, but for everyone you work with, because then who do they want to work with? They want to work with you. So if you're in Rent to Rent Kickstarter program, we go deeper into this topic in M4.7, including the magic words that every letting agent wants to hear. And if you're new with us today and you'd like to learn more about Rent to Rent, check out our free Rent to Rent Success Masterclass. And that's at renttoRentsuccess.com/guide, GUIDE. That's all for now. I will see you next time. Bye for now. Thank you so much for being with me here today. If you would like more, we've written the #1 best-selling book on Rent to Rent. You can find it at renttoRentsuccess.com/book. Reviewers on Amazon have described it as the best Rent to Rent HMO book and also as a definitive reference guide and inspirational. Take your next step today and buy the book. You can find it at renttoRentsuccess.com/book. And I'll see you again next time. Until then, remember, believe bigger, be bolder, be a game changer.